She texts the Mafia boss by mistake. Hours later, the hospital called him about a baby. At first, it seems like a stupid accident, a wrong number, a harmless message. But in this world, one wrong text can ruin your life. The most dangerous man in the city shows up at her door. He should have laughed it off. Instead, he drags her into his world of guns, secrets, and blood. And then, the hospital calls. A newborn, abandoned, registered under her name. She swears she knows nothing. He doesn't believe her. His enemies whisper it's all a trap. Suddenly, she's locked inside his mansion, a crying baby in her arms, and a mafia king watching her every move. He's ruthless, possessive, willing to kill for her. She's defiant, desperate to escape. But the more she resists, the more he wants her. Who left the baby under her name? Why does every rival family now want her dead? And when the truth comes out, will she survive being the mafia boss's greatest mistake? Or become the one thing he'll never let go? Drop a comment below and share which part of the world you're tuning in from today. If you enjoy stories like this, don't forget to subscribe for more. Through the steamy kitchen window of Joe's all-night diner, the city lights blurred into a hazy glow. Ava Carter's feet ached as she balanced another stack of dirty plates, her white uniform spotted with coffee stains and grease. 10 hours into her double shift, and her tips barely covered this week's grocery budget. "Order up!" Tony, the cook, slapped the bell. His voice grated against her already fraying nerves. "I'm coming," she muttered, forcing a smile as she delivered lukewarm burgers to table 6. The clock on the wall seemed frozen at 11:45. Only 15 more minutes. When midnight finally arrived, Ava practically ran to the break room. She yanked off her apron and grabbed her worn leather bag, not bothering to count her tips. The night manager barely looked up from his phone as she clocked out. The autumn air hit her face as she pushed through the diner's doors, a welcome relief after hours in the stuffy kitchen. Her apartment was 12 blocks away, but she couldn't afford the subway fare tonight. At least the walk would help clear her head. 3 blocks into her journey, her phone buzzed. A Facebook notification. Her ex-boyfriend Jake had posted new photos. There he was, grinning with his arm around Sarah from their psychology statistics class. The same Sarah she'd caught him with 2 weeks ago. White-hot anger surged through Ava's chest. She stopped under a streetlight, thumbs flying across her phone screen as she typed, "You know what? I hope you choke on your lies. 2 years together and you couldn't even tell me to my face? Had to let me walk in and see it myself? You're a pathetic coward who wouldn't know real loyalty if it slapped you in that smug face. Have fun with your cheap replacement. Hope she's worth throwing away someone who actually loved you." Ava jabbed the send button, satisfaction flooding her veins. Only then did she notice she'd selected the wrong conversation thread. Instead of Jake's number, she'd sent the message to an unknown contact she must have misdialed recently. "Oh God," she groaned, pressing her palm to her forehead, but it was too late to take it back now. 15 stories above the city streets, in a penthouse office with floor-to-ceiling windows, Dante Moretti's phone vibrated against his mahogany desk. He ignored it at first, his dark eyes fixed on the 5 capos seated before him. These weekly meetings determined the flow of money, drugs, and blood through his territory. "The Russians are pushing again at the docks," Vincent, his oldest captain, reported. "Testing our response times, seeing if we've gotten soft." Dante's jaw tightened. "And have we?" "No, boss. We sent 3 of their soldiers home in pieces last night." "Good." Dante's phone buzzed again, drawing his attention. He rarely received direct messages to his private number. Every person who had it knew better than to interrupt him unless it was life or death. He picked up the phone, ready to order someone's execution. Instead, the message made his eyebrows rise slightly. He read it again, the corner of his mouth lifting in what might have been amusement. The capos shifted uncomfortably, unused to seeing any expression on their boss's face during business. Dante was known for his stone-cold demeanor, his ability to order death while sipping espresso without changing expression. "Someone," he said softly, "seems very disappointed in me." He turned to Marco, his tech specialist. "Trace this number. Find out everything about whoever sent this message." "Right away, boss." Marco pulled out his tablet, fingers flying across the screen. Vincent leaned forward. "Should we send someone to handle it?" "No. Dante set the phone down carefully. I'm curious about someone bold enough to speak to me this way, even if it was meant for someone else. His dark eyes gleamed. Continue your report. The meeting resumed, but Dante's thoughts kept drifting to that message. Such raw emotion, such unfiltered anger. In his world, everyone measured their words carefully, afraid one wrong syllable might earn them a bullet. This anonymous woman's fury was refreshing. Meanwhile, Ava finally reached her fifth-floor walk-up, legs trembling from exhaustion. She unlocked the 3 deadbolts on her door, stepping into the tiny studio apartment she could barely afford. The springs creaked as she collapsed onto her second-hand mattress, not bothering to change out of her uniform. Her phone showed no response from the wrong number. Thank goodness. With any luck, it was a defunct line, and her emotional outburst would fade into digital oblivion. She set an alarm for her morning classes, pulled her thin blanket up to her chin, and drifted off to sleep. She couldn't know that across the city, in a luxury penthouse with silk sheets and armed guards, Dante Moretti was reading her message for the 3rd time. His fingers traced the edge of his phone as Marco quietly gathered every detail of Ava Carter's life. Her work schedule at Joe's Diner, her graduate studies in psychology, her small apartment in a crumbling building. Interesting, Dante murmured, studying the security camera photo Marco had pulled from the diner's system. Even exhausted and angry, there was something compelling about her face, something that made him want to see what other emotions those expressive features could display. But Ava slept peacefully, unaware that her misdirected message had caught the attention of New York's most dangerous man. She didn't know that Dante Moretti had already memorized her schedule, her address, her daily routine, that tomorrow, his black SUV would be parked across from Joe's Diner, waiting to observe the woman who had inadvertently intrigued him. In her dreams, Ava was far away from diners and cheating boyfriends, free from the grinding stress of graduate school and poverty. She couldn't know that her life was about to change forever, all because of one angry text sent to the wrong number. Sunlight streamed through the tall windows of Marshall University's library, casting long shadows between the towering wooden shelves. Ava adjusted her reading glasses, trying to focus on her psychology textbook despite the exhaustion still lingering from last night's shift. The quiet study area on the 3rd floor was her sanctuary, a place where she could forget about demanding customers and empty bank accounts. She shifted in the worn leather chair, her highlighter hovering over a passage about cognitive behavioral therapy. The coffee from the campus cafe was doing little to sharpen her concentration. Maybe she should have stayed home after that horrible shift, but her thesis deadline wouldn't wait for her to recover. A shadow fell across her textbook. Ava looked up, expecting to see one of her B-Blang classmates. Instead, her breath caught in her throat. A man stood there, tall, imposing, dressed in an expertly tailored black suit that probably cost more than her yearly tuition. His presence seemed to steal all the air from the room. Dark eyes studied her with predatory intensity. A slight smirk played at the corner of his mouth, but it didn't reach those cold eyes. Something about him radiated danger, like a perfectly carved statue concealing a weapon inside. "Miss Carter," he said, his voice a low rumble that sent shivers down her spine. "I believe we had an interesting exchange last night." Ava's mind raced, confusion giving way to dawning horror as she connected the dots. The wrong number. The angry text meant for her cheating ex. Oh God. He moved closer, placing both hands on the table and leaning down until his face was level with hers. "You have quite the vocabulary." Pathetic excuse for a man was particularly creative. Her heart hammered against her ribs. This man had traced her number, found out who she was, and tracked her down, all over one misdirected text. The implications made her blood run cold. "I'm Dante Moretti," he continued, watching her face for recognition. "But something tells me you didn't know that when you sent your little message." The name hit her like a physical blow. Everyone in the city knew that name. The heir to the Moretti crime family, now its ruthless leader, the Devil of New York. They called him in whispered conversations. He straightened up, circling around the table like a shark. "You should be more careful about who you accidentally insult, little girl. Some men might take offense." Something in his condescending tone sparked through Ava's fear. She'd spent years dealing with men who thought they could intimidate her, customers, professors, her cheating ex. Before she could stop herself, she stood up, meeting those dangerous eyes directly. "I'm not apologizing," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "The text wasn't meant for you, but I won't grovel just because you're used to everyone bowing at your feet." Surprise flickered across his face, quickly replaced by something darker, more intense. He moved with liquid grace, backing her against the nearest bookshelf. His arm came up beside her head, caging her in. "Most people who speak to me that way don't live long enough to regret it," he murmured, close enough that she could smell his expensive cologne. Ava lifted her chin. "Is that supposed to scare me into submission? You tracked down a graduate student over a text message. Seems pretty insecure to me." A muscle ticked in his jaw. For a moment, she thought she'd pushed too far. Then his lips curved into a genuine smile, predatory and fascinating. "You're either very brave or very foolish, Miss Carter." "Maybe I'm just tired of men thinking they can control me through fear," she shot back. His eyes darkened as they roamed her face, lingering on her lips. The tension between them shifted, charged with something beyond threat and defiance. His free hand came up, fingers ghosting along her jaw but never quite touching. "Fear isn't what I want from you," he said softly. Ava jerked away from him, gathering her books with trembling hands. She needed to get out of there before she did something truly stupid, like lean into his touch or challenge him again. "Stay away from me," she warned, though they both knew she had no power to enforce that demand. She hurried toward the stairs, feeling his eyes burning into her back. Just before she reached the exit, his voice carried across the quiet library. "Welcome to my world, Ava Carter. Whether you know it or not, you're already in it." She didn't look back, didn't slow down until she was outside in the bright sunshine. Only then did she allow herself to lean against a wall, legs weak, heart racing. The rational part of her brain screamed to go to the police, but she knew it would be useless. Men like Dante Moretti owned this city, including many of its cops. The memory of his smile, equal parts threatening and seductive, haunted her all the way home. She had stood up to the devil himself, and instead of killing her, he'd looked at her like she was the most fascinating creature he'd ever encountered. That, she realized with a shiver, might be even more dangerous. Ava's hands shook as she chopped vegetables for her dinner, the steady rhythm of the knife against the cutting board failing to calm her nerves. The encounter in the library kept replaying in her mind. Those dark eyes, that predatory stance, the way he'd made her tiny 5'4" frame feel even smaller. She tossed the carrots into her simple stir-fry, trying to focus on the sizzle of oil rather than the memory of Dante Moretti's voice. "Get it together," she muttered, pushing her long brown hair back from her face. "He was just trying to scare you. It's over now." But even as she said the words, something deep in her gut told her it wasn't over. Men like that didn't just appear and disappear. They lingered, like smoke after a fire. Across town, in his penthouse office overlooking the city lights, Dante Moretti's phone rang. The caller ID displayed St. Mary's Hospital. His expression darkened as he listened to the nurse's words. "A baby was left at our emergency entrance an hour ago," the nurse explained. "The paperwork lists Ava Carter as the mother. Given your influence in the city, we thought it prudent to inform you directly." Dante's fingers tightened around the phone. "Send me everything." His voice was deadly quiet. Within minutes, the documents appeared on his secure server: birth certificate, medical records, all with Ava's name carefully typed in the mother's field. He stood, his 6'3" frame radiating controlled fury. "Get the car," he barked at his security team. "Now." Ava had just settled onto her threadbare couch with her dinner when her apartment door burst open. She barely had time to scream before Dante Moretti filled her doorway, his expensive black suit a stark contrast to her modest studio apartment. "What game are you playing?" he demanded, crossing the space between them in 2 long strides. "What? How did you?" Ava scrambled backward, her dinner clattering to the floor. "You can't just break into my apartment." His hand closed around her upper arm. Not painful, but impossible to break free from. "A baby was abandoned at St. Mary's Hospital. Care to explain why your name is on the birth certificate?" "What?" Ava stopped struggling, genuine confusion replacing her fear. "That's impossible. I don't have a baby." "We'll see about that." He dragged her toward the door, ignoring her protests. "Bring her coat," he ordered one of his men, who quickly snatched her worn denim jacket from its hook. The night air hit Ava's face as Dante marched her to a waiting black SUV. She tried to dig in her heels, but he simply lifted her off her feet and deposited her in the back seat. "This is kidnapping," she snapped as he slid in beside her. "This is me getting answers," he replied coldly. "If you're innocent, you have nothing to fear." The hospital's fluorescent lights made Ava's head pound as Dante escorted her through the corridors, his hand still firmly gripping her arm. Staff members scattered at their approach, averting their eyes. They reached the nursery, where a nurse led them to a clear bassinet containing a tiny bundle wrapped in a pale blue blanket. "The infant was left with these documents," the nurse explained, handing a file to Dante. "Healthy baby boy. Approximately 3 days old." Ava stared at the sleeping baby, her heart racing. "I've never seen this child before in my life," she whispered. "I haven't been pregnant. I haven't given birth. Someone's using my name." Dante studied her face intently, his dark eyes searching for any sign of deception. After a long moment, he nodded slightly. "She's telling the truth," he declared. "But someone went to considerable trouble to connect her to this child. Why?" The baby stirred in his sleep, making tiny snuffling sounds that made Ava's chest tighten despite her fear. Who would abandon such a tiny thing? And why use her name? "Pack everything the baby needs," Dante ordered the nurse. "He's coming with us." "What?" Ava turned to him in shock. "You can't just take him. Watch me." Dante's voice was steel. "Someone is playing a very dangerous game, using both your name and an innocent child. Until I know who and why, you're both under my protection." His grip on her arm tightened. "And you, Ava Carter, are not leaving my sight. I have classes," she protested weakly. "My job, all easily handled." He guided her back toward the exit as his men collected the baby and supplies. "Welcome to my world, little bird. Let's hope you learn to fly in a cage." The SUV pulled up to massive iron gates that opened silently at their approach. Ava pressed her face against the window, taking in the sprawling estate that emerged from the darkness. Manicured lawns stretched into shadows, and the mansion itself looked like something out of a Gothic novel, all stone and terrifying grandeur. As the vehicle came to a stop, Ava realized with growing dread that her life as she knew it had just ended. She was now a prisoner in a mobster's fortress, tied to a mysterious baby and a dangerous man who wouldn't let her go until he uncovered the truth, no matter how long that took. Sunlight streamed through heavy silk curtains, rousing Ava from a fitful sleep. For a moment, she forgot where she was, until her hands touched the impossibly soft Egyptian cotton sheets, so different from her threadbare bedding at home. Reality crashed back like a wave. She was trapped in Dante Moretti's mansion, caught in a web of danger she still couldn't comprehend. The bedroom was beautiful, she had to admit. Cream-colored walls, antique furniture that probably cost more than her yearly tuition, bathroom bigger than her entire apartment. But the luxury couldn't mask the prison bars, metaphorical perhaps, but no less real. Ava slipped out of bed, her bare feet sinking into plush carpet. She'd slept in yesterday's clothes, having refused the silk nightgown some maid had left out. Moving quietly to the door, she tested the handle. To her surprise, it wasn't locked. Hope fluttered in her chest. The hallway was silent and empty. Ava patted down it, trying to remember the twists and turns from last night's forceful entrance. Her heart hammered against her ribs as she descended the grand staircase, each step carefully placed to avoid any creaking. Freedom seemed within reach, until she rounded the corner toward what she thought was the front door. Two suited men materialized from nowhere, their faces impassive but their stance unmistakable. They weren't moving. "Going somewhere, little fox?" Dante's voice rolled through the foyer like thunder. He emerged from a side room, impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit despite the early hour. "I admire your spirit, but you won't make it past my men." "You can't keep me here," Ava spat, backing away from both the guards and Dante. "This is kidnapping. This is protection." He moved closer, his presence filling the space between them. "Someone used your name to abandon that baby. They're playing a game, and you're a piece on their board. Out there, you're vulnerable. Here, you're under my shield. Your shield feels an awful lot like a cage." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Better my cage than their coffin, Kara." Before Ava could argue further, a commotion at the door drew their attention. A woman in medical scrubs entered, carrying a car seat. Inside was the tiny infant from the hospital, peacefully sleeping. "The transfer paperwork is complete, Mr. Moretti," the woman said, setting down the car seat. "All preliminary health checks are excellent." Dante dismissed her with a nod, then surprised Ava by kneeling beside the baby. His large, dangerous hands she knew had ended lives, were impossibly gentle as he unbuckled the sleeping infant. "She needs to be fed," he said, cradling the baby with unexpected expertise. "The formula is in the kitchen. Will you help, or shall I call a nanny?" Ava found herself moving forward despite her anger. The baby was innocent in all this, and something in her couldn't bear the thought of a paid stranger providing cold comfort. "I'll help." In the massive kitchen, Ava prepared a bottle while Dante held the now fussing infant. The domesticity of the scene was jarring, a notorious crime boss swaying slightly, murmuring soft Italian words to soothe the baby's cries. "You're good with her," Ava said reluctantly, testing the formula temperature on her wrist. "I wouldn't have expected that." "I helped raise my younger brother," Dante replied, his voice carrying an edge of old pain. He accepted the bottle, settling into a chair to feed the baby. "Family is everything in my world, Ava. Blood or chosen, we protect our own. Is that what I am now? Yours to protect?" She couldn't keep the bitterness from her voice. His dark eyes locked onto hers. "For now, yes. Until I know who's using you to get to me, and why." The day passed in a strange blur of infant care and tense conversations. Ava found herself drawn into a routine of feedings, diaper changes, and brief naps when the baby slept. Dante appeared periodically, checking on them, making calls in rapid-fire Italian, his tenderness with the baby a stark contrast to the cold authority in his business dealings. As night fell, Ava paced her room, mind racing. The baby was sleeping in a nursery down the hall, monitored by cameras and guards. The luxury surrounding her felt suffocating. The silk sheets, the designer clothes that had appeared in the closet, all of it a gilded prison. The crack of gunfire shattered the night's silence. Ava rushed to the window, heart in her throat. In the Bros Place 7 daughter, darkness beyond the estate's gates, muzzle flashes lit up like deadly fireflies. Guards emerged from the shadows, returning fire with military precision. The door burst open behind her. Dante stood there, gun drawn, his face a mask of controlled rage. "Step away from the window," he ordered. When she didn't move fast enough, he crossed the room in 2 strides, pulling her against his chest and away from the potential line of fire. The shots faded into silence, but Dante's arm remained around her waist, his body solid and warm against her back. "Still think you're safer out there?" he asked, his breath stirring her hair. Ava closed her eyes, trying to ignore how her body betrayed her by melting into his protection. The night wasn't over, and neither was her captivity. But for the first time, she wondered if prison and sanctuary might be the same thing. The night shattered with the sudden wail of alarms. Ava bolted upright in bed, her heart hammering as gunfire crackled through the darkness. She rushed to the window, pressing herself against the wall beside it as she peered out into the shadowy grounds. Floodlights bathed the manicured lawn in harsh white light, revealing dark figures moving through the hedges. More shots rang out, and she saw Dante emerge from the house, his tall frame unmistakable even from this distance. He moved with lethal grace, barking orders to the men fanning out behind him. Their black tactical gear made them look like shadows given form. Her fingers dug into the wallpaper as she watched Dante raise his gun with practiced ease. The shot echoed, and one of the intruders crumpled. There was no hesitation in his movements, no mercy in his stance. This was the devil of New York in his element, dealing death with mechanical precision. Men fell under his command, their bodies dropping like puppets with cut strings. Ava couldn't look away, horrified yet mesmerized by the violent ballet unfolding below. Dante moved like a predator, each step calculated, each shot finding its mark. His men followed his lead with military precision, clearing the grounds section by section. The firefight lasted less than 10 minutes, but to Ava, it felt like hours. When silence finally fell, broken only by the continued blare of the alarms, she counted 5 bodies lying motionless on the lawn. Dante stood among them, his suit jacket dark with what she knew wasn't just shadow. Heavy footsteps in the hallway made her whirl around. The bedroom door swung open, and Dante filled the frame, his presence overwhelming the space. Blood spattered his white shirt and face, a stark reminder of what she'd just witnessed. His gun was still in his hand, and his eyes burned with residual battle fury. "Are you hurt?" His voice was rough, urgent. Ava shook her head, unable to find words. Her whole body trembled as she backed away from him, bumping into the window seat. Something in her reaction made his expression shift. He holstered his weapon and approached more slowly, like she was a spooked animal he didn't want to frighten further. "You're safe," he said, his tone gentler now. "No one got past the perimeter." "I saw you," she whispered, the images of his deadly efficiency still fresh in her mind. "You killed them, just like that." "Yes." He didn't try to deny it or soften the truth. "I'll kill anyone who threatens what's mine." The possessive statement should have terrified her more, but somehow his honesty was oddly steadying. Dante stopped in front of her, close enough that she could smell gunpowder and expensive cologne. He raised his hand, and she flinched slightly, but his touch on her cheek was surprisingly tender. "You're shaking," he observed, his thumb brushing across her skin. The contrast between this gentle gesture and the violence she'd just witnessed made her head spin. "I don't know how to process any of this," Ava admitted, her voice unsteady. "Yesterday I was just a grad student. Now I'm watching people die on your lawn. This is my world," he said simply. "Until we know who's using your name, who left that baby, you need to stay in it. I can protect you here." The reality of her situation settled over her like a heavy cloak. Whatever game was being played, whatever reason someone had for dragging her into this dangerous world, she couldn't fight it alone. "I'll stay," she conceded, "until we figure this out." Satisfaction flickered across his blood-spattered features. He stepped back, already pulling out his phone to bark orders about cleaning up the mess outside. Hours later, after the bodies had been removed and the grounds restored to their manicured perfection, Ava found herself wandering the quiet halls. Sleep eluded her, the night's violence playing on repeat behind her eyelids whenever she tried to close them. A soft sound drew her attention to a partially open door. She recognized it as the makeshift nursery where Dante's men had set up the mysterious baby's crib. Approaching silently, she peered through the gap and froze at the sight before her. Dante sat in a plush rocking chair, his large frame incongruous against the delicate furniture. The baby was cradled in his arms, tiny against his broad chest. He'd changed from his bloody clothes into a simple black shirt, but the dangerous aura still clung to him, except now it was tempered by something else. His expression was distant, haunted, as he gently rocked the infant. The fearsome Mafia boss who'd killed without hesitation hours ago now handled this small life with infinite care. Ava watched, transfixed, as his finger was caught in the baby's tiny grip. For a moment, she glimpsed the man beneath the monster, someone capable of tenderness, someone who perhaps remembered what it was to be vulnerable. The sight stirred something unexpected in her chest, a dangerous softening she couldn't afford to examine too closely. The morning sun streamed through the high windows of Dante's industrial-grade kitchen, catching on stainless steel surfaces and casting warm rectangles across the marble countertops. Ava moved through the space with quiet determination, ignoring the bewildered stares of the house staff as she cracked eggs into a bowl. The familiar motions of cooking centered her, gave her something normal to cling to in this abnormal world she'd been thrust into. The kitchen staff hovered uncertainly at the edges of the room, clearly unsure whether to stop her or help her. They'd probably never seen anyone but themselves dare to use the boss's kitchen. Ava ignored them, whisking the eggs with practiced movements while bacon sizzled in a pan. "What's this?" Dante's deep voice came from the doorway, making her jump slightly. She turned to find him watching her with those dark, calculating eyes, dressed impeccably in a charcoal suit despite the early hour. "Breakfast," she answered simply, turning back to the stove. "I needed something to do besides sit in that gilded cage upstairs and worry." The staff scattered as Dante moved closer, his presence filling the spacious kitchen. "You cook?" There was genuine curiosity in his voice. "I worked in diners since I was 16. Had to learn." She slid the eggs onto a plate, adding the crispy bacon beside them. Without looking at him, she held out the plate. "Here, you probably haven't eaten yet." To her surprise, he actually took it, settling onto one of the bar stools at the kitchen island. Ava busied herself making her own plate, hyper-aware of his gaze following her movements. "It's good," he said after a few bites, sounding almost surprised. "Don't sound so shocked." She sat down 2 stools away from him, maintaining what felt like a safe distance. Even dangerous men need to eat. His lips quirked. "That we do." He set down his fork, and she noticed for the first time the network of thin white scars crossing his knuckles, trailing up his fingers like pale spiderwebs. Catching her stare, Dante splayed his hands on the dark marble. "Curious?" Ava swallowed hard but nodded. She'd seen scarring like that before, in psychology case studies. Those are old, very old. My father believed in hands-on education. His voice was neutral, but something dark flickered behind his eyes. Started training us to fight when I was 6. Made us punch concrete walls until our knuckles split. Said it would make them stronger when they healed. Horror crawled up Ava's throat. Us? My brother and me. For a moment, raw pain crossed his face before it smoothed back to stone. He didn't survive our education. Ava's hand moved without her permission, reaching across the space between them. Her fingers barely brushed his scarred knuckles before she caught herself, yanking back as if burned. What was she doing? This man was a killer, a crime lord. She couldn't let these glimpses of his humanity affect her. But Dante caught her retreating hand in his grip gentle but unbreakable. Heat rushed through her at the contact, unwanted but undeniable. His thumb traced circles on her palm, sending shivers up her arm. "Don't pull away from me, Bella," he murmured, his voice dropping to that dangerous velvet tone that made her pulse race. "I see how you look at me when you think I'm not watching." Ava yanked her hand free, standing so quickly her stool scraped across the floor. "I look at you like what you are, someone who hurts people for a living, someone I need to be afraid of, and yet you're not." He rose too, towering over her. "Not really. That's what fascinates me about you, Ava. You see exactly what I am, and still you challenge me. Still you look me in the eye." She backed away, but he matched each step until her lower back hit the counter. He caged her there with his arms, bringing his face close to hers. "Tell me you don't feel this." "I don't want to feel anything for you," she whispered, but her betraying body leaned toward his heat. The moment shattered as Dante's phone buzzed. He growled in frustration, but stepped back, pulling it from his pocket. His expression darkened as he read whatever message had come through. "The baby," he said, "all business now. My men found a connection. The mother had ties to the Bratva, the Russian mob. She worked in one of their clubs before she disappeared 3 months ago." Ava wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly cold. "Why would they want to connect the baby to me?" Dante's jaw clenched. "Because they've seen you with me. They're watching, and they've decided you matter." He stepped close again, but this time it wasn't seduction in his eyes, it was warning. "You're marked now, Ava. They'll use you to get to me, to challenge my territory. That's why you can't leave." The full weight of her situation crashed down on her. She wasn't just trapped by Dante anymore, she was trapped by the whole violent world he inhabited. There would be no walking away, no returning to her normal life, not now that she wore an invisible target on her back. "I never wanted any of this," she said, her voice breaking. "I know." For once, there was no satisfaction in his tone, only grim acceptance. But we don't always get what we want. Sometimes fate makes other plans. The sleek black car glided through the gathering darkness, its tinted windows concealing the passengers within. Ava smoothed down the midnight blue evening gown Dante had ordered for her, the silk cool against her skin. Her heart hammered as they approached the sprawling mansion where the meeting would be held. "Stay close to me," Dante commanded, his voice low and gravelly. He wore an impeccably tailored black suit that emphasized his broad shoulders and powerful frame. "These people respect power, and tonight they need to see you're under my protection." Ava wanted to argue that she didn't need protecting, but the events of the past few days had taught her otherwise. The weight of the diamond bracelet he'd clasped around her wrist earlier felt like a brand of ownership. As they entered through towering wooden doors, the opulent gathering space fell into a hushed silence. Dozens of eyes tracked their movement men in expensive suits, women draped in jewels and designer dresses. Ava felt their stares like physical touches. Dante's hand settled possessively on her lower back, guiding her through the crowd. Men immediately parted before him, heads bowing in deference. "Don Moretti," they murmured. some actually dropping to one knee as he passed. The display of power made Ava's skin prickle. They reached a raised dais where several older men sat in leather chairs, smoking cigars. These were the other family heads, Ava realized. The air felt thick with tension and unspoken threats. "The meeting will begin shortly," Dante told her, his lips brushing her ear. "Wait here." He stationed her near a column where two of his most trusted guards stood watch. From this vantage point, Ava could observe the whole room. Women clustered in small groups, shooting her curious and sometimes hostile looks. Their whispers carried, "Who is she? The devil's new pet. Did you see how he watches her?" Ava lifted her chin, refusing to be intimidated. She watched as Dante commanded the room, issuing orders that no one dared question. His presence was magnetic, dangerous, and compelling. When he spoke, even the other bosses leaned forward to catch his words. After an hour of tense discussion in Italian that Ava couldn't follow, music began playing from hidden speakers. The formal portion of the evening was transitioning to something more social. Dante immediately returned to her side. "Dance with me," he said. It wasn't a request. He pulled her onto the dance floor as a slow song filled the air. His hand spanned her waist, the other clasping hers as he drew her close against his chest. Ava's breath caught at the intimate contact. "Everyone is watching," she whispered, acutely aware of the eyes on them. "Good." His voice rumbled through her. "Let them see who you belong to." "I don't belong to anyone," Ava protested, but it lacked conviction. The heat of his body, the possessive way he held her, the electric tension between them, it was becoming harder to deny the pull. They moved together perfectly, his steps guiding hers with practiced ease. When he spun her, the skirt of her dress flared dramatically. As he pulled her back, their faces drew close enough that she could feel his breath on her lips. The ride back to his mansion was charged with unspoken hunger. Ava's skin felt too sensitive, every bump in the road making her aware of his proximity. When they arrived, Dante dismissed the guards with a sharp gesture and led her up to his private suite. The door had barely closed before he had her pressed against it, his powerful frame caging her in. "Tell me to stop," he growled, face inches from hers. Instead of pushing him away, Ava's hands fisted in his shirt, pulling him closer. Their lips crashed together in a kiss that was all heat and desperation. Months of tension exploded in that moment. His hands roamed her body possessively as he kissed down her throat. Ava gasped when he lifted her, wrapping her legs around his waist as he carried her to his massive bed. The silk dress whispered to the floor, followed by his suit jacket and shirt. Their coupling was intense and passionate, tender yet demanding. Dante worshipped every inch of her skin with his mouth and hands, drawing out her pleasure until she cried his name. When they finally came together, the connection felt inevitable, like gravity pulling them into each other's orbit. Afterward, Ava drifted toward sleep wrapped in expensive sheets, her body deliciously sore. Through heavy lids, she watched Dante prowl the darkened room, his muscled form silhouetted against the city lights. He paused by the window, turning to study her with an expression of mingled possession and uncertainty. For the first time, she glimpsed the war within him, the need to claim her, warring with the fear that by doing so, he'd already begun to lose her. The devil of New York had found his match, and it terrified him as much as it thrilled him. Exhaustion pulled at her eyes as she watched him standing guard over her rest, a dangerous protector torn between his nature and his heart. Sunlight filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Dante's master suite, warming Ava's skin as she stirred awake. The silk sheets felt luxurious against her bare skin, but the space beside her was empty and cold. Her fingers traced the indent where Dante had slept, remembering the heat of his touch from the night before. She sat up slowly, wrapping the sheet around herself, and noticed Dante standing by the window. His muscular frame was rigid with tension, hands clasped behind his back, as he stared out at the manicured grounds below. He wore only black dress pants, his torso bare, revealing the network of scars that mapped his violent past. "Dante?" she called softly. He didn't turn around. "Get dressed. We need to talk." The ice in his voice made her stomach clench. Gone was the man who had held her so tenderly just hours ago, replaced by the cold crime lord she'd first met. Ava slipped into a cream sweater and black pants she found laid out for her, her hands trembling slightly as she worked the buttons. When she finished, Dante finally faced her. His dark eyes, usually smoldering when they looked at her, now held something harder, Suspicion. He tossed a manila folder onto the bed between them. Photos spilled out, surveillance shots that made her blood run cold. They showed someone who looked like her meeting with a man in a dark coat. Care to explain? Dante's voice was deadly quiet. That's not me, Ava said immediately, picking up one of the photos with shaking hands. I've never seen this man before in my life. My sources say he's Bratva, the same people who might be behind leaving that baby in your name. Dante stepped closer, his presence overwhelming. Are you working with them, Ava? Was this all an elaborate setup? No. Tears burned in her eyes. I would never. How can you think that after everything? After what? A few nights together? His laugh was bitter. I've seen better plays from far more skilled manipulators. I'm not playing anything. Ava stood, facing him despite their height difference. Someone is trying to frame me. First with the baby, now with these photos. They must have found someone who looks like me. Or doctored the images. A deafening explosion cut off her words. The windows shattered inward, sending them both diving for cover. Gunfire erupted from multiple directions as black-clad figures rappelled down from helicopters hovering above the estate. Stay down! Dante shoved her behind an overturned leather armchair, already pulling a gun from a hidden panel in the wall. His security team burst through the door, reporting that the attackers had breached multiple entry points. The baby, Ava gasped. They'll go for the baby. Dante barked orders into his radio, but the response was garbled by static. More explosions rocked the building. Through the chaos, they heard a high-pitched wail from down the hall. The nursery. Without thinking, Ava bolted from cover, ignoring Dante's shout. She ran toward the sound, her heart pounding. She reached the nursery door just as two masked men emerged, one carrying the screaming infant. Stop! She cried, launching herself at them. The bigger man backhanded her with brutal force, sending her crashing into a marble side table. Pain exploded through her side as the edge caught her ribs. She heard Dante's roar of rage from behind her, followed by gunshots. But the attackers had planned well. A smoke grenade filled the hallway with thick white clouds. More gunfire exchanged in the confusion. Ava tried to stand but slipped in something wet. Her own blood. She realized distantly. When the smoke cleared, the baby's cries had faded. The attackers were gone, leaving only broken glass, bullet holes, and shell casings in their wake. Ava lay on the floor, each breath sending sharp pain through her side. Dante's hands found her in the clearing air, gathering her carefully against his chest. His face was transformed by a fury she'd never seen before, but his touch remained gentle as he assessed her wounds. I'm sorry, she whispered, her vision growing hazy. I couldn't stop them. Shh. His voice broke as he pressed his forehead to hers. Blood, hers or his, she wasn't sure, smeared between them. If they take you from me, I'll burn this city to the ground. The raw anguish in his words followed her as consciousness slipped away, along with the feeling of his arms tightening protectively around her broken body. The steady beep of medical monitors pierced through Ava's consciousness as she slowly opened her eyes. White walls and the sharp scent of antiseptic told her she was in some kind of medical facility. Her body ached, and thick bandages wrapped around her torso restricted her movement. As her vision cleared, she found Dante sitting beside her bed, his usual immaculate appearance disheveled, his white shirt stained with what she realized must be her blood. His dark eyes met hers instantly, alert despite the exhaustion etched into his features. He hadn't slept. That much was clear from the shadows under his eyes and the stubble darkening his jaw. His large hand engulfed hers, thumb stroking her knuckles with surprising gentleness. You're in my private clinic, he said, his voice rough. The bullet missed anything vital, but you lost blood. Too much blood. The last words came out as a growl, his grip tightening slightly. Ava tried to shift and winced. The baby? She whispered, dreading the answer. Dante's face hardened into a mask of cold fury. The Bratva has her. Their attack was coordinated. They used you as a distraction. He stood suddenly, pacing the length of the room like a caged predator. They thought they could take what's mine. They were wrong. What are you going to do? Ava asked, though she already knew the answer. She could see it in the deadly calm that had settled over him, in the calculated violence waiting to be unleashed. I'm declaring war. he stated flatly. Every Bratva operation in this city will burn. Every safe house, every front business, every rat hole they hide in. He turned to face her, his expression terrible in its beauty. I'm mobilizing everyone. The entire organization. By tomorrow, the streets will run red. Dante? No. Ava struggled to sit up, ignoring the pain that shot through her side. You can't throw everything away for revenge. They'll be expecting this. It could be exactly what they want. He was at her side in an instant, helping her settle back against the pillows even as he shook his head. This isn't just about revenge, Kara. They need to learn what happens when they target what belongs to me. His hand cupped her cheek, thumb brushing over her bottom lip. They hurt you. They took our baby. The possessive words sent a shiver through her, but Ava refused to back down. Then let me help. I won't hide away while they're still out there. You can barely stand, he countered, but she saw the flash of pride in his eyes at her determination. I don't care. Ava gripped his wrist, meeting his gaze steadily. I won't cower in some safe room while you risk everything. They shot me. They took that innocent child. I deserve to be part of this. Dante studied her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Finally, he nodded slowly. You'll stay close to me. No arguments, no risks, no heroics. If I tell you to run, you run. Understood? Understood, she agreed, relief flooding through her. She knew he could have forced her to stay behind, could have posted guards to keep her confined to this bed. His willingness to let her stand beside him meant more than she could express. The room fell, silent, except for the steady beep of monitors. Outside the window, the sky was beginning to lighten with the first hints of dawn. Dante's men would be gathering, preparing for the storm their boss was about to unleash on the city. I need to go, Dante said finally, his voice low and intense. My captains are waiting. We move within the hour. He leaned down, one hand tangling in her hair as his lips claimed hers in a kiss that was both brutal and desperate. Ava responded with equal fervor, tasting his fury and his fear, his need to mark her as his own before he left to wage his war. When he pulled back, his eyes were dark with promise. I'll return to you, he vowed, his thumb tracing the line of her jaw. Or I'll die trying. Either way, the Bratva will learn what it means to cross me. Ava watched him stride toward the door, his shoulders set with deadly purpose. Just before he left, he paused, looking back at her one final time. The love and violence warring in his expression took her breath away. Then he was gone, leaving her with the weight of his promise and the knowledge that by sunrise, the city would be at war. The medical monitors continued their steady rhythm as Ava closed her eyes, sending up a silent prayer, not for peace, but for Dante's safe return. She knew there would be no peace until justice was served, until the baby was safe, until the Bratva paid in blood for their transgression. For now, all she could do was heal and prepare herself for whatever came next. The marble halls of Dante's estate echoed with an eerie silence that made Ava's skin crawl. Hours had passed since he'd left with his men, and the waiting was its own kind of torture. Her bandaged wounds pulled with every movement, but she refused to rest in bed like a helpless damsel. Instead, she positioned herself in Dante's study, converting it into an impromptu command center. Maps and documents spread across his mahogany desk as she coordinated with the skeleton crew of guards left behind. The men had been hesitant at first, eyeing her with suspicion, but her sharp questions and strategic thinking gradually earned their respect. Miss Carter, Marco, one of the younger soldiers, approached with a tablet. Our surveillance picked up movement at these 3 locations. His finger traced potential Bratva hideouts on the digital map. Ava leaned forward, ignoring the throb in her side. The power usage patterns, she murmured, remembering details from her psychology studies about group behavior. Check which buildings suddenly increased their electricity consumption. A baby needs warmth, light, regular feedings. The guards exchanged impressed glances as they began cross-referencing utility data. Ava felt a flutter of pride. She might be trapped in this world, but she refused to be useless. Across the city, Dante moved like a demon through the Bratva compound. The night air carried screams and gunfire as his men systematically eliminated every obstacle between him and his target. Blood sprayed across his expensive suit, but he barely noticed. His vision had narrowed to a single purpose: destruction. Boss, one of his captains called out, East wing secured, no sign of the child. Dante's jaw clenched as he stepped over another body. The Bratva's defenses were crumbling, but something felt wrong. This was too easy. Almost like, back at the estate, Ava's instincts screamed a warning seconds before the study door burst open. Giuseppe, Dante's trusted advisor of 15 years, entered with his gun already drawn. "Don't move," he ordered, his familiar grandfatherly face twisted with contempt. "You've served your purpose well enough, little pawn." Ava's mind raced as several pieces clicked into place. "It was you," she said, keeping her voice steady despite her pounding heart. "You arranged for the baby to be left in my name. You made sure Dante would find me." Giuseppe's laugh was cold. The mighty Dante Moretti, undone by a pretty face and an infant. Pathetic. He gestured with the gun. The Bratva paid well for this opportunity. "Now, be a good girl and kneel." "No." Ava lifted her chin, channeling every ounce of defiance she'd shown since that first day in the library. "If you're going to shoot me, you'll have to do it while I'm standing." The betrayer's finger tightened on the trigger. "Your bravery won't save you. Dante's empire falls tonight, starting with you." At the Bratva compound, Dante's phone buzzed with an urgent message. His blood froze as he read it. Surveillance footage showing Giuseppe entering his study, weapon drawn. The pieces connected with devastating clarity. The setup, the convenient intel, the too easy assault on this decoy location. "Everyone back to the cars," he roared, already running. "It's a trap." The drive back to the estate was a blur of rage and fear. Dante had trusted Giuseppe, treated him like family. Now that trust might cost him everything. His knuckles whitened on the steering wheel as he pictured Ava facing his betrayer alone. The estate's entrance hall was eerily quiet when Dante burst through the doors, his men fanning out behind him. Blood dripped from his cufflinks as he moved with lethal grace, checking each room until he reached his study. The scene inside stopped him cold. Giuseppe stood behind Ava, gun pressed to her temple. But it was Ava's expression that caught him, fierce and unbroken, despite the fear he could see in her eyes. "Let her go." Dante's voice was deadly quiet. "Your quarrel is with me." Giuseppe sneered, tightening his grip on Ava. "The great Dante Moretti, brought low by a woman and a baby. Your father would be ashamed. The family legacy, ruined because you couldn't control your heart." "You're wrong," Ava spoke up, earning a rough shake from her captor. "Love doesn't make him weak. It makes him stronger than you'll ever understand." The tension in the room crackled like lightning before a storm. Dante's dark eyes met Ava's, volumes passing between them in that silent exchange. His expression promised vengeance, but first, he had to ensure her safety. The game had changed. This was no longer just about power or territory. This was about protecting what was his, what had become more precious than empire or revenge. Giuseppe's betrayal hung in the air like poison, but Dante's focus remained laser-sharp. He had walked into countless dangerous situations, but never had the stakes felt so personal. The man he had trusted for years now held everything he cared about at gunpoint, and the weight of that betrayal burned like acid in his veins. The traitor's arm tightened around Ava's throat as Dante burst through the study doors, his suit splattered with crimson evidence of the battle he'd just fought. His dark eyes went cold and deadly at the sight before him. One more step, and she dies. Marco, Dante's former right-hand man, pressed the gun harder against Ava's temple. "Drop your weapon, boss." His voice dripped with mockery on the last word. Dante's fingers flexed around his pistol, but he didn't lower it. "You betrayed me to the Bratva." It wasn't a question. The fury in his voice made even the air feel heavy. "They offered a better deal," Marco sneered. "And your pretty little distraction here made it so easy." The mighty Dante Moretti, brought low by a woman. Ava struggled against Marco's grip, her heart hammering. "Dante, don't listen to him." "Shut up." Marco jerked her roughly, making her gasp in pain as her wounds protested. Something dangerous flickered in Dante's expression. He took a deliberate step forward, his movement pure predator. "You touch her again, and I'll make sure you die screaming." Always with the threats. Marco laughed, but there was fear beneath his bravado. "Drop the gun, or I paint your fancy walls with her blood." Time seemed to slow. Ava watched Dante's face, saw the calculations running behind his eyes. His gaze met hers for a fraction of a second, and somehow, she understood what he was about to do. In one fluid motion, Dante dropped his gun, but as it clattered to the floor, he was already moving. Marco's attention shifted to the weapon for just a split second. It was all Dante needed. Ava drove her elbow back into Marco's ribs, just as Dante had taught her during their confined days together. The traitor's grip loosened enough for her to drop and roll away. 2 gunshots exploded through the room. When Ava looked up, her ears ringing, Marco lay dead on the marble floor. But Dante was clutching his shoulder, blood seeping between his fingers. "Dante." She scrambled to her feet, running to him. His face was pale, but his eyes burned with relief as he pulled her against him with his good arm. "You're safe," he breathed into her hair. "You're safe." The study doors burst open again as Dante's men flooded in, led by his most trusted captain. "Boss, we found the baby." "She's unharmed, secured in the east wing." Ava sagged with relief against Dante's chest. Thank God. But Dante wasn't done. He cupped her face with his bloodied hand, searching her eyes with desperate intensity. "Tell me you didn't betray me. Tell me it was all their lies." "Never." Ava's voice broke as tears spilled down her cheeks. "I would never betray you. They set me up, tried to use me against you. But I'm yours, Dante. I've been yours since that first day in the library." Something cracked in Dante's carefully controlled expression. He pressed his forehead to hers, his next words raw and ragged. "I doubted you. For even a moment, I doubted, and it nearly destroyed me. I can't," his voice caught. "I can't lose you. Not you." "You won't," Ava whispered, her fingers trailing over his jaw. "I'm right here." Dante's grip tightened possessively. "You're mine now. Forever. Whether you want it or not, there's no walking away from this from us." The fireplace cast dancing shadows across the blood-stained marble as Ava lifted her face to his. "I don't want to walk away." His kiss was desperate, claiming, full of all the fear and fury and need of the past hours. Ava melted into him, tasting copper and gunpowder, feeling the tremors that ran through his powerful frame. His touch branded her, marked her as thoroughly as the violence that surrounded them. When they finally broke apart, both breathing heavily, Dante's eyes were dark with possession. "Mine," he growled against her lips. "Yours," Ava agreed, and sealed her fate with another kiss. The flames crackled in the hearth, casting an amber glow over the aftermath of violence Marco's body, the splattered blood, the scattered papers from their struggle. But in Dante's arms, Ava found she didn't care about the darkness. She had chosen her path, chosen him, chosen this dangerous, beautiful life where love and death danced so closely together. Dante's wound still bled, but he seemed oblivious to the pain as he held her. His kiss deepened, grew hungrier, more demanding. Ava matched his desperation with her own, needing to prove she was alive. They were alive. They had survived. The firelight painted them in gold and shadow as they clung to each other. 2 souls forged in violence but bound by something stronger than fear or duty. Something that would burn longer and hotter than any flame. The morning sun filtered through the restored windows of Dante's estate, casting golden light across marble floors that had been stained with blood just days ago. Ava stood at the window, watching workers put the finishing touches on repairs while armed guards maintained their vigilant posts along the perimeter. A week had passed since the night of betrayal and bloodshed. The bullet holes were patched, the broken glass replaced, but Ava could still feel the echoes of violence in these walls. Yet somehow, she felt more at home here than she ever had in her tiny apartment. Warm, strong arms encircled her waist from behind. "What are you thinking about, cara mia?" Dante's voice rumbled against her ear, sending shivers down her spine. "How everything has changed," she murmured, leaning back against his chest. "A month ago, I was just a broke grad student. Now you're mine." His grip tightened possessively. "And today, everyone will know it." Ava turned in his arms, studying the face that had haunted her dreams since that first meeting in the library. The sharp angles of his jaw, the dangerous glint in his dark eyes. Everything about him screamed power and threat. Yet his touch on her skin was gentle, reverent. "The families are gathering?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. Dante had spent days arranging this meeting, a formal declaration of his claim on her, ensuring no one would dare touch what belonged to him. They'll be here within the hour. He brushed his thumb across her bottom lip. Are you ready? Before she could answer, a baby's cry echoed through the mansion's halls. Ava's heart tugged at the sound. The infant who had started everything, whose mysterious appearance had entangled their lives. I'll get her, Ava said, but Dante caught her hand. Let Maria handle it for now. I need you focused on what's coming. The great hall filled slowly with New York's most dangerous men and their families. Ava watched from the top of the grand staircase as they arrived. Capos, underbosses, allied family heads, each paying respect to Dante with careful bows and measured words. She wore a dress of deep burgundy, chosen by Dante himself. The silk clung to her curves, making her feel both powerful and exposed. A diamond necklace worth more than her old yearly salary graced her throat, another mark of his possession. When Dante finally called her down, every eye in the room tracked her descent. She kept her chin high, remembering his words, "Show no fear. They're more afraid of me than you ever need to be of them." He took her hand at the bottom of the stairs, drawing her close to his side. The room fell, silent as he addressed them, his voice carrying to every corner. "Many of you questioned my judgment when I brought this woman into our world," he began, his thumb stroking circles on Ava's palm. "You whispered that love makes men weak, that I was losing my edge." His smile turned predatory. Those who acted on those whispers are now feeding the fishes in the Hudson. A collective shiver ran through the crowd. Everyone knew about Marco's betrayal and his fate. "Ava Carter is mine," Dante continued. "My woman, my heart. Touch her, threaten her, even look at her wrong, and I will personally ensure your death is remembered for generations." He raised their joined hands. "She is untouchable, as is the child we now claim as our own." Murmurs rippled through the assembly, but no one dared object. Dante's recent display of violence had reminded them all why he was feared throughout the city. Later, after the families had gone and the baby was settled for the night, Ava found herself in their bedroom, watching Dante remove his suit jacket. The events of the day felt surreal, like a dream she might wake from at any moment. "Having second thoughts?" he asked, noting her expression. "No," she answered honestly. "That's what scares me. I should be horrified by all of this. By you, by what you do." She crossed to him, placing her hand over his heart. "Instead, I feel safe, protected, like I finally found where I belong." His eyes darkened with hunger and possession. "You do belong here, with me." He captured her mouth in a searing kiss that left her breathless. "Come, there's something I want to show you." He led her to the balcony overlooking the city lights. The night air was cool, but his body warmed her as he pulled her back against his chest. Below them, New York sparkled like scattered diamonds on black velvet. "All of this is mine," he murmured against her hair. "Every street, every building, every shadow. But none of it meant anything until you crashed into my life with that wrong number text." His arms tightened around her. "You were a mistake that became my salvation. You'll never escape me, Ava. You're mine forever." Standing there in his embrace, watching their city glitter below, Ava finally accepted the truth she'd been fighting since the beginning. She belonged to this dangerous man, this beautiful monster who killed without mercy but loved her with desperate devotion, and she wouldn't have it any other way. Thank you for listening. Stories connect us in the most unexpected ways. If you felt that spark today, make sure you're subscribed. I share a new one daily, and the next might change your day.